In my last video I fitted the door locks to the car. The next thing I'm going to do is put some glass in these doors. I stored all the rubbers and glass inside the car, so I need to remove all this masking. This car was masked a number of times as it's been in and out of the garage over the last 4 years. I got tired of masking tape and I'd used duct tape, so it was actually pretty impenetrable. It's actually really nice to see Chewy's steering wheel and fascia again. I hadn't so much storage when I started this project, and as things have been inside and added to different times, it's gotten a bit chaotic in the back seat there. But the parts were coming to hand. I'm using Q10 penetrating oil because it has some rust dissolving properties, and there was some on the lower edge of this rubber seal where moisture had accumulated. So I'm just clearing that out now using a cloth and the flat blade of a screwdriver. It would be a shame to be giving rust a head start in these areas under the rubber. That one fits nicely under the plastic interior trim. I have no visual line where the paints join, and the interior trims actually cover any of the oil colour inside, so it's going to look like a proper respray. This one is really quite dusty, but no rust. So just blow it out with the airline. My system of a box for each door is working out really well. The parts are coming to hand. That slots in a very satisfying way. The winder mechanism is in great condition. Probably didn't really need to take that out. I left the front ones in. But at least there'll be no paint in the gears. Must remember to grease it before I stick on the door cards. There's a handy little hole there to grease it. I've taken the little retainer clip from the winder so that I can slot it on and off here until the door card is on. Just getting the mechanism into the right position. It looks chaotic in there, but you know, I actually used that waterproof cover to separate the glass, so things like that weren't rubbing together. On my Talbots and Opals, that metal bracket at the bottom of the glass would be very, very rusty. The seals on the Charade must have been quite good, and not a lot of water was getting down the glass. That's why I was keen to clean the glass and also the rubbers, because we had a lot of trees around our house before, so there would have been resin and stuff that was drying that out and blocking that up, and having survived so well up to now, it'd be nice to preserve them for the next 30 years. On these rubber channels where the glass will be moving through, it's not to remove rust that I'm spraying them. That's Q60 silicone spray, and that will help the glass to move freely. It'll keep the rubber nice and supple and makes it easier for slotting in like this. The glass will probably help that come into the exact right position when it pushes it up. So the trick is to leave the other end hanging out and then slot in the metal guide before it's all fixed in place. if the guide was already fully in place as you tried to do the rubber, there would be a lot of friction against it by the glass on the lower bit. So this would be too hard, whereas loose at the top gives you this bit of extra wriggle room. You just kind of align the top corner as to where it should roughly be, and then you can pull the two bits up together and then get in that little locating screw on the top. The little screw is getting Q20 lubricant. I brought the window up then so that the lower part of that channel was kind of forced back into its correct position, whereas when the window was down it kind of had angular pressure, so it was actually keeping it away from the locating hole. That little arm is for the interior door latch when the door card goes on. Finally, the last weather strip. That's kind of got a felt finish to it there, and again it's just a little bit crusty, so that'll clean it up, and the silicone spray will help it interact with the glass well. It's a little bit broken at the end, so that's one part. I'll keep an eye out for a replacement. Moving on to the driver's door. Start with the glass here. It's a single pane, no quarter light. I'll just clean that up. You can really see that line of dirt, which you can only clean off with the window out of the car. So same trick with the window handle. I'm lining up the support for the glass. It's a little slider. I love the way this car is designed. You're able to get the bolts right in line with those holes. They really thought about ease of production in the factory. This is a handy little tool, this, with the kind of screwdriver handle for the sockets. Good for going in here, and then you can actually slot the ratchet onto the end for tightening. I'll give this the same Q60 silicone treatment. These Q products are all from efox.ie. I think the front side windows are actually easier than the back to do. I suppose the back ones are in a tighter space. I suppose the advantage of working on your own is that things don't move about by themselves. The inside of this car is like a time capsule since I sealed it up. And things are close to where they came off. This weather strip works the same way as the rear one, but I think it's important that it goes on before the mirror. This little guy has very fancy electric mirrors, or to be precise, mirror. For some reason, the passenger one isn't there. So the one you could reach with your hand is electric. So that's something else that I might shop around for. And as I have suggested that some of these parts that I'm fitting back on, I might like to recondition at a later stage. But for the moment, I want to get this car back together. That didn't sound so nice winding it up earlier, but it's already moving a little bit nicer. I'll just drop in the cable there for the mirror. I resisted the temptation to put the plastic cover on over these bolts because I think the door card needs to go on first. There's an additional seal above the doors that runs right up from the A-pillar. I wonder if it was an afterthought that the door seals weren't enough to keep out the wind noise. Perhaps because of the way the driver's door in particular goes flush around the A-pillar, it would have caught quite a bit of air. Or maybe it's just the start of more modern design. While the car had been parked up outside, water had gathered between that rubber and the tops of the doors, and a little bit of rust had started. It's nice now that the fresh paint will be sealing up against this silicone treated rubber, and hopefully there'll be no whistling noises on the motorway. I completed exactly the same tasks on the other side and finished it off with the non-electric mirror. Now to the rear window, which fits much like a front windscreen on an earlier 80s car. There's no sealant involved, and I'll fit it using a bit of rope. I was a little worried when I pulled out the wiring for the rear wiper whether I'd be able to feed it back in again. But actually with the tailgate up, a solution presented itself. Gravity would allow me to feed in some string. And then I just taped the wires onto the end of the string and was able to pull them through. There was just one little hiccup at the end.
Close. Close enough.
I got away with that one and didn't have to get a better tape. The grommet, which was similar to the principle for the electric mirror on the driver's door, was a little bit stubborn, and I gently used the screwdriver to prise it through, being careful not to tear the rubber. The positioning of the boot seal was a little bit harder to judge than the doors because there's no hard corner, but there were little holes to go around the base of it at the bottom of the hatch to allow water to drain. So these were a clue as to how it should be positioned. I'm using Q10 penetrating oil here along the lower edge rather than the silicone for its rust dissolving properties. I think that's a nervous smile. I still haven't gotten over the breaking of the original windscreen when it was coming out. Just making sure I have both ends of the string out and that they're crossed over. And then you have to start with the right one that's on the near side of the other string to get it going. This is a marine string or rope, often used around shrimp pots, and I have been accused of using a string that's a bit too small, although I've seen other people using electrical flex. This stuff is very plasticky and has a really waxy feel to it, so although it may be a little bit on the small side, it pulls through with the rubber, and I've not really had any feeling that it might tear the rubber. A bigger one would actually cause more pressure as you're pulling it out, especially at the beginning overlap, but also in those last few inches where the glass is under the most strain. Those are sounds I didn't need to hear. All is well. What a relief. I'm always a little tense about glass on this car. Brilliant. Airtight.